excited to see real humans. It's been a while since we've run physical events, so wonderful to see you, and I hope it's first of many for you. So just to welcome everybody, I'm Eva, I'm from Cybersalon, which is a digital think tank founded in 1997, mainly focusing on policy on digital rights and campaigning for improving digital rights. But identity and deepfakes are very much in our space, so we thought it would be great to start observing what's happening in that space and what tools are emerging to fight deepfakes, or at least to minimize them. So a very exciting evening for you, very varied evening. Our event today is a fundraiser for Ukraine, so we contributed all the tickets and all the sponsorship to two organizations. One is TechFugees, who match people with skills to NGOs, founded in 2015 on the last refugee crisis, and kept busy ever since and super busy now. And the second organization is Polish Humanitarian Action, who is the biggest organization that's organizing the relocating of refugees in Poland. It's just gone over 1.6 million. So it's a lot of people, and they're trying to do it home to home versus camps. So a lot of work to provide caseworkers, support, so people just don't disappear and never be seen again, because obviously it's not easy thing to relocate refugees. So a lot of work, and anybody who is interested, let me know. We also will have the bit.ly for the donation QR for TechFugees. So this is that one, and talk to me after if anybody's got time to contribute. So that's tonight, but we're mainly going to be talking about deepfakes and NFTs. So the introduction today will be by Stefan Lutschinger, who has been looking into that area for a while. He is teaching BA Digital Media in Middlesex University. Cybersalon is related to and associated with many years, probably about 8 years. But we also work with Westminster University, so Kian here is representing the Westminster University, and the other students are from both. And then we'll have Caron, who is working with Arts Council on the NFTs project for actors in the theatre sector. Something slightly probably out of the left field for many, but the whole area is out of the left field, so we'll explore that as well. And we have three amazing startups who are exploring specific aspects of cryptocurrencies, games, music, art. So it is quite creative space and quite appropriate for Cybersalon history in art and digital media. So just to say, our sponsor for tonight is Hydro 66, which is green data center in Sweden. One of the original miners, mining entirely on green energy, up in Sweden, very high up. Most of the reasons is because they have the 66 dams that produce a lot of electricity, but you have to use it locally. And mining is one of the better things to use locally. That energy cannot be used anywhere else, because by the time you send it to Stockholm, there's nothing left of it. So this is one of the very good examples where green data centers are doing a very good job. So without further ado, if I can pass on to Stefan, who will do the little introduction.
Very good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all for the first time in real space, and I would like to extend a very warm, special welcome to my students who have made it to my event tonight. So thank you so much. I'll probably need to grab this microphone.
Don't go too far, because we're using the one on the table for the recording.
Oh yeah.
Use both, just don't go too far.
Okay, very well. So without further ado, really, I would assume that most of you, or at least half the people in the audience, are experts in cryptocurrencies and smart contracts and the development of digital apps, and also decentralized anonymous organizations. So this is why I've just focused on one particular aspect tonight, and that's the concept of the metaversity, as I've called it. So the idea of how can we actually use blockchain technology and NFTs to create exciting learning experiences and possibly also assessments. So if we could have the next slide, please. I always tell my students, whenever they come across a new term, they should research its origin. And the term metaverse, that's been popularized by Zuck since 3 or 4 months, is actually has its origin in the probably most famous hacker or cyberpunk novel ever written, and I believe many of you have read it. It's indeed Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. And I believe his description of the metaverse is still the most accurate that we have. So he is not actually here at all. He's in a computer-generated universe, and his computer is drawing onto his goggles and pumping into his earphones. And in this lingo, his imaginary place is known as the metaverse. It beats the shit out of you storage, which is the competitor. If we could move on to the next slide. Yeah. So this is the snow. This is the snow crash, a meta snow crash. So it's actually quite considerable. It's quite remarkable. The company loses almost 50% of its value just in 2 months. It never happened before in the history of the Nasdaq. Can we just move on to the next slide? So what interests me in particular in the context of content authentication and smart blockchains is the ability to extend and work with smart contracts. Again, so the first mention we'll find in Stephenson's Cryptonomicon, 1999. Probably also some of you have read, in which our protagonists not only invent the notion of digital gold, what we later would become Bitcoin, but also smart contracts that they would be utilizing for Holocaust education and avoidance here, as it's called. So if we could move on to the next slide. An application that we can now see taking off in the context of fundraising for Ukraine. So Ukraine is about to launch an NFT to mark the history of the social invasion, but also tell the local history of the war through the blockchain. Even further, so I'm sure that you're all aware that one of the huge advantages of the blockchain is that whatever's been stored there will stay there forever. It's decentralized, therefore it is safe. Another example for smart contracts in the context of Ukraine. This is indeed the first Shepherd ferry that I've ever bought for roughly £100. And the way it works is that the primary and secondary sales will go to the organizations that support Ukrainian disaster relief. So what it means is that even if I bought this NFT, I wouldn't be able, if for whatever reason the prices would rise, which is to be expected, I wouldn't be able to cash in on them because all of the proceeds will go towards Ukrainian relief. So this is one of the things that smart contracts allow us to do. Another, and this is the last point that I'm trying to make because I've promised ever to be brief. One of the projects that I find particularly interesting is the Adobe-led Content Authenticity Initiative. And since a couple of months, we are now able to create NFTs, but not only NFTs, but content authenticated documents in Photoshop. So the way it works is when you go to your preferences and enable technology reviews to be able to use the better features, you can then connect your Photoshop environment to MetaMask, the Ethereum blockchain, and then use it to store your metadata. And I find this super exciting because it allows us to see what's actually around the corner. So I truly believe that the blockchain and content authentication can help us to combat deepfakes. So I believe it is the next big thing, and I look forward to your thoughts.
Okay, we will do the questions and answers after. Yeah, the reason we started digging into it because a friend of ours was working in Singapore, and somebody called him pretending to be, deepfake voice, giving him instructions to move quite a large amount of money to another bank account. And it's gone so far that they nearly pressed the button on about $30,000. So the deepfake of the voice of the CEO who was instructing him was so good that he just could not get his head around the fact that it could have been fake. So obviously the visual fakes we've seen already, but it's the audio fakes that are making the rounds around banks at the moment, and that's an interesting concept. So we've started looking, what is the opportunity to solve it through authentication of everything. So if something is not authentified, it shouldn't be taken into consideration. So that's the kind of journey we were on. But if I can ask Caron, who has got a project sponsored by Arts Council to delve into the opportunity to authenticate actors and deepfakes with visual people faces.
Because I've got a hectic set of notes that I'm hopefully going to share with you during this little session. So here we go. So, hi, I'm Caron, and at the end of mid-August 2021, I received notification from the Arts Council saying that they'd agreed to my Develop Your Creative Practice, which was this crazy project to look at theatre and audiences across digital, physical and virtual audience strategies. So, being part of the things that I've done with Cybersalon, this authentication and the NFT part of this arena brought me back to the Future. Who has seen Back to the Future? All films. All films. You've seen all films. Yep. You have. Now, Crispin Glover played the father of Marty McFly. However, Crispin Glover, the actor, only played the father of Marty McFly in film number 1. At the end of the film, he didn't like where the series was going, and he refused to sign a contract with the rest of them. Films 2 through 5 do not star Crispin Glover. They used a face cast that was done for the previous makeup and created prosthetics to make an actor look like Crispin Glover. And he sued the film company for the use of his likeness without his permission. Even then, the notion of deepfakes, this was back in 1986, the court case was 1990. Even back then, the notion of actors being able to protect their identity on film was an issue. So although we're now entering deepfake through altered technology, how do you know? And for actors, it's really key that if they're on film, how do you know if you're going to be used again in the future? If your body is scanned, how do you take ownership of that? And I think sort of whether technology is used for promotional purposes or whether it's used for authentication with the arts. I'm going to return to my notes because I'm getting off track. So I have a 1-year development of my creative practice granted by the Arts Council. My vision is to produce a small theatre production that blends physical space with virtual reality, with extended reality, and the design of the stage to create new work that goes to audiences that wouldn't normally see that type of theatre. As part of that offer, I was interested in NFTs as well. Can we use NFTs as part of the investment portfolio of a theatre company, that as part of the media that you create, the media becomes minted on a blockchain that can then be offered as a perk to an investor, but also to the cast, the creators, that in years to come, when people bump into them and go, weren't you in that little show that toured the UK? And the main actor, God, didn't he become big? Wasn't he just in that Hollywood movie? And they go, yeah, he was. I never really went on to continue acting. And they go, didn't you have an NFT? And they go, yeah, you know, are they still a thing? Are they still a thing? And they'll go, oh yeah, I'd like to own that. They go home. The way that they have the NFTs, they can put it for sale, and all of a sudden a piece of live theatre becomes something that you can authenticate and that you can actually commoditise. So part of what I'm trying to solve with my investigation of NFTs is the validation of a CV, a validation of a creator's CV, and equity in rewards as well. I would like to have a link to my NFT portfolio of these things that can be verified by IMDb through a hash, that they can go and have a look at a blockchain and say, oh, actually, you were in that show that you say that you were in the National Theatre or in the Crucible. In my case, I've just got paper programmes that say I was in it. There's nothing on my CV to say that I really was in any of the things that I claim that I was in. And then we go back to Guardian journalists who on their CV say, I wrote for The Guardian, and actually they didn't. They just commented on a post many years ago and then claim that they were a journalist. So film and TV talent have benefited from syndicated residuals, and there's a mechanic, I think, in there to provide theatre talent with a similar reward system, and that's what I'm investigating really over this sort of 12 months. So these thoughts and these provocations are leading me on a journey to bring my role of looking at NFTs together with exploring through my theatre work the suspension of disbelief and the suspension of reality. And can you use live theatre and a lot of the modern motion capture to extend through projection and VR stages to show an audience something that halfway through they might go, hold on a minute, the back wall of that stage isn't that far away. And if you can warp the reality of somebody sat in a physical space and everyone around them, how can the conversation with them then be turned to, well, what have you been looking at online that's real? How do you know that something and The Mandalorian was filmed in the desert? A lot of The Mandalorian is not filmed in location. It's now filmed on virtual sound stages, and they are amazing to look at, but they are all not filmed on location. So this whole notion of I can't believe what I'm hearing, or seeing is believing, it's really not going to be like that anymore. And then the Uncanny Valley. We've all had that, what's the Uncanny Valley? And we've spent years looking at things on screen and going, oh, that doesn't look quite real. And until now, the human eye knew when something wasn't right. And that Uncanny Valley has been something that media has tried to move over. But now, unfortunately, we're moving into Canny Valley. And with Web 3, there comes this Canny Valley. I recently heard about an experiment that showed faces to a panel of people who were real and people who were AI generated, that had pleasing faces that you might want to engage with. And the panel not only failed to distinguish between the real and the AI generated faces, but they actually showed preference for the AI generated nice faces. So deepfake is definitely something that we all know is here, and we're the wizards, we're the engineers and the architects and the artists, And we're the ones that are making and building and constructing all of these things. Anyone can imagine things, but the manifestation of those ideas takes particular skill, and that's why we are the wizards. I heard someone refer to Declan, who is here doing the tech, about how he's a wizard. And I think we've all, in our time, people go, how do you do that? You have a way of using it, and people would like to. So tonight I'm here to be truly who I am, an internet adventurer and explorer. I'm crypto curious, and Cybersalon back in 2014 brought me literally to the reason why I'm stood here today. In 2007, I met a group of social media pioneers, and to them at the time, social media was a dirty word, but for a better term, that's what we've ended up with. And even then, they were saying, how do you leverage this for my business? What's in it for me? Why would anybody ever do social media? Why would someone want to tweet? ROI. How many times I heard that? How do I leverage social media? And right now we've got Facebook and Twitter, and these are all those Web 2 things that have survived. I mean, here's a little list for you of things, if you're a bit nostalgic, and deep techies tend to be. What happened to Posterous, and Beam, and Seismic, and BAMuser, and Bebo, and MySpace? They were all great champions of their time, and especially with Beam, we've even lost features that were really useful. I used to like putting my phone to my chest and being able to film what I was filming. Beam was fantastic. But as I say, that was the dawn of Web 2. But it was commerce, and the only way people could make money out of it, ultimately, was not the artists. It was the commoditization of our media, and that's been the bane of Web.2. It's almost like the gentrification of streets, that gentrification tends to be kick-started by the artists and the creatives that make the place somewhere that people want to be, and then ultimately they get moved out of the area and everybody else comes in. And I'm hoping that Web 3 might be something a little bit different. So although I'm a theatre maker and a tech warrior, what people said about 2.0, there's a similar generation that are echoing the bemusement with Web 3. And why am I interested in Web 3? Well, just as I come to a close here, blockchain, NFTs, decentralization, digitization of proof with proof modeling, consensus, and interrogating the truth, conflict resolution, and taking control of my data. The only problem at the moment with a lot of the things for someone as a tech adventurer is how you interact with crypto, and that's what I'm wanting to learn from a lot of people here. So if you've got any projects that you want to share or find out how audiences can engage with them, please do talk to me, because it is about legacy, authentication, provenance, immutability, and interoperability. I said the word. But it's an evolution of the services, and that's my journey. You know, I had my first wallet when I had to move my cryptocurrency into a wallet. I've recently got to the point where I've got to move from a wallet into purchasing an NFT, and that journey is not quite as easy as people think. But art and blockchain are all the rage right now. And just as social was a new application of technology to bigger, better and stronger, it gave a wider existence to purely what was already around in the analog world. And so I came back to Arthur C. Clarke's An Exploration of Magic, and I'm sure you've all heard this and you all quoted it. Any sufficiently advanced technology is distinguishable from magic. And there's some of the things that are going on at the moment with crypto and DeepFake and how we interpret what we're seeing that is quite magical to a lot of the world. And how is it that we help people navigate that? So that's what I'm wanting to do with my art. And I thank you all so much for entertaining my little journey, and I hope I'll come back in and tell you where it gets to.
Yes, we all have to remember that some of you were probably not born when the social media were born, but there's always this crazy excitement, and then inevitably the only people who make any money out of it are advertising companies. So that's why people are getting excited about Web3, because this time there is a reward structure and it might be a little bit different. So thank you very much, Caron and Stefan. So can we move on to the startups who are working in this space and discovering new ways of using this technology. So maybe the Sandoshi guys can come along, if you can find the presentation. So this team has been working together for quite a long time now, so it's quite a well-settled team. It's four of you here. And hopefully they can tell us about their adventures, what problems they're solving, how they're going to solve it, and what help do they need from people on the journey.
Like Freddy, streaming is killing music. My name is Lukas, and I'm from Sandoshi. I will tell you today why is that and how we are going to change that. Let me tell you, let me paint you a picture. So let's assume I'm the musician and you're a musician as well. Let's agree upon that we both gonna stream each other music for 1 month. So together we are paying $20 to the subscription, and after 1 month we both only listen to each other. We should, I guess it will be only fair if we both got $10 each for listening. But the truth is that from streaming platform we will get almost nothing. So where $20 went? Well, if we can go to the other side, or we don't have to do, yeah, one more. It went to Drake. And Drake has nothing to do with it. He's a great artist, he's a successful one. And he's suffering from success, like DJ Khaled. And why is that? Because streaming services are putting these small artists against these colossus. And let's go to the beginning of our presentation. You may know this song that I have played for you. It's the most successful song from Queen. It's Bohemian Rhapsody. And why am I talking about Queen? Well, the question is that we need to ask is that why current service system doesn't work for either artists or listeners? And we asked that question, and the two recurring answers we got were this. The subscription model creates the system in which you would stream. The subscription model creates the system in which you would have to stream in such huge quantities that just to get little financial incentive, that it is not achievable but are upcoming or even medium-sized artists. The second one is because the above current model offers virtually no benefits for artists to make music that is worth listening to. Musicians are making music to fit the distribution model. They are making short, provocative, and violent songs. So, and another one, and another one, and another one. Conclusion is simple. Streaming services are selling subscriptions, not music. Another one. The rest assured. We have found a solution that will solve these problems today and will offer the sustainable model for future generations. Solutions come from blockchain. Blockchain has a capacity to change the current market for the better. Thanks to the technology, we are able to create a place where creators are not forced to make algorithm music that just grab our attention. We want them to stop being focused on numbers of views and streams. It's time for artists like Queen before to focus on what matters to them, to the quality of the message and their fan base. This is why we created Sandoshi, the city of sound. The city metaphor is no coincidence. We wanted to create space for artists and users alike, to have music interaction on a scale that had never been seen before. You, as a user, decide which artist you want your money to go to. Sandoshi solves this problem in 3 simple steps. First one, Sandoshi creates a user-centric model that allows direct connections between artists and the listeners. Another, Our solution is cheaper for user and more profitable for artists. We are creating a solution that will allow small and medium artists to get paid fairly. And we will introduce new revenues stream that would make all artists appreciate our proposal. Another one. Sandoshi is introducing biggest innovation since iPod. We have reimagined the appeal of vinyl. We call it digital vinyl. Right now, we are not going anywhere. We are on a rescue mission for music. To tokenize all existing music and put it on the blockchain, we need a small amount of $140 million. But rest assured, we are not asking for that much.
Yet.
If you would like to learn more about us or how can you contribute, please feel to visit our platform at www.sandoshi.com or come to talk with us. We'll be happy to answer any questions that come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. This is the team from Poland, which is going to conquer the world, as we tend to. The next startup is Richard. Richard, are you there? Yeah, so he's working on slightly different sector, equally exciting for many of you here. It's games. And tell us what you're thinking.
Thank you very much, Eva. Good evening, everybody. This is a nice kind of return to the past for me. I met Eva 10 years ago when she asked me to write about Bitcoin for the Cybersalon. I wrote about the identity of Satoshi and wow, all of the associated things, including that Neil Stevenson novel that our friend brought up earlier this evening. So, why am I here this evening? Well, I tried to open with something constructive about the human spirit that I truly believe. I've been on the journey for the last 3 years learning much more deeply about Bitcoin than I had ever learned before. That's right, okay. So I'm kind of an accidental co-founder of this rather controversial incubator called Satoshi Block Dojo. The Satoshi Block Dojo is building exclusively on Bitcoin SV. My past is a little bit, the Ninja Tune has been left out there. My past is a VJ in Tokyo, worked for Ninja Tune straight out of school. My first gig was for Torture Garden, and I had a colourful past before I became a journalist. What I have found, and I've been pitching to universities and business schools for the last 6 months now, presenting the Satoshi Block Dojo and Bitcoin SV. And what I found is I need to have some fun. So, next slide, please. This is my idea of fun: Ninja Punk Girls versus the evil Aerobots. Okay, it's an NFT project. Next slide, please. Representing love, liberty, and friendship. Some of these are modelled after my friends. Wayne Smith is now. Some of my past girlfriends, good and bad. And these are an NFT series that we released about 2 months ago on Bitcoin SV, just to show that it could be done. We released 650, we sold them for a penny each. Transaction fees are 1/100 of a penny. It's not like Ethereum, which is junk, so we can actually scale. Next slide, please. Here is our next series, Series 2. In fact, they say Series 2, they're really Series 2. And we're doing 3,333 unique NFTs, and we're going to sell them for a third of a BSV each, which is about £25. And what that gives you is a unique playing card, which you can then play against other people, a bit like Top Trumps, right? You might win, you might lose. You also have a team, you belong to a team. You've got your own name, you've got a number, etc., etc. The most interesting thing about this, we're just pushing NFT technology a little bit further forward, is we're putting a public address on a unique public address on every card, and we, the company, control the private key, which means we can drop you new weapons, new powers, we can keep a record of all of the battles that you've fought, and you can keep that, but you can't remove it. which means when you go to sell your card, you sell it with all the associated powers and weapons and all the other bits and pieces, the game history that it's gone through. So it's a product. Now, it's only a small innovation. I'm quite glad that we get to do this, because I've been looking forward to making real products in Bitcoin for about 9 years, and I've been really frustrated by the whole digital gold narrative. Next slide, please. What we can do, giving you these NFTs when you buy them, we can upgrade them, update them, we can drop you the elements, the different weapons that you've got, the different parts of your, by the way, these are the error bots. So it's Ninja Punk Girls versus the evil error bots, these are the bad guys. We can drop you the different elements to your card, and we can also upgrade them so that they are 3D versions of the card, and we're going to build a fighting game like Tekken that you can take your card into. All of this is possible on Bitcoin SV. Next, please. Obviously, DeFi is a huge part of the 3D game, the NFT gaming space. We really like it, we're quite interested in doing it. Again, we're putting QR technology inside the notes. Probably won't be releasing these, selling these, we'll be giving these away as rewards for in-game. Next slide, please. So Fortune Business Insights pegged the gaming industry at more than $200 billion in 2020, and gaming-related NFTs generated $4.8 billion in revenue. So there's lots of prizes out there to be made. There's lots of opportunity for investors, and we think Ninja Punk Girls is going to be super successful. And the reason for that is Ethereum, where most of the NFT things happen today, is fundamentally broken. It does 15 transactions per second. Transactions cost as much as $20 each. It's not suitable at all for gaming platforms. Their side chains and what are they called?
Polygon.
Thank you. Layer 2s
Sol.
are a disaster. Silicon Valley last week announced they were going to put $450 million into Polygon. Next week, it crashed. So, second layers, we know they don't work. We know they're security flaws. We know they're a problem. That's why Block Dojo is so controversial, because we only believe in one global blockchain, and that's Bitcoin SV. Next slide, please. This is the global games market. Again, $196 billion. Maybe 10% of that is people who also own crypto. So it's a huge market, but it's getting bigger and bigger. Next slide, please. And you can see this is from last year, how gaming is going up and it's beating the other applications, DeFi and NFT on blockchain. We expect to see that continue. As the blockchain scales, it will soak up more and more of the internet, more and more online games will get integrated into the blockchain. And we want to be at the forefront of that tsunami of economic activity and inclusion. Next slide, please. Here's a few random things that I've thrown together. You can see there's a whole bunch of game studios. We want to be a game studio, which is why we're proposing 2 different games and 2 different game engines. Here's the spread of different blockchains that are all decentralized and they're all crap and none of them work. And eventually, they'll all die out. And they'll be replaced by Bitcoin SV. Next slide, please. If you know this, this is Axie Infinity. Axie Infinity made a huge splash last year. It was I think its accumulated market cap at the moment is about $2.8 billion. Apparently they made between $600 and $700 million in revenue last year. Now bear in mind, these are on platforms that actually fundamentally don't work and they're broken. So what happens when we have a platform that does work and the crypto is invisible and we're just using normal digital cash in the normal way? We are supported by the Satoshi Block Dojo. They've invested £10,000 in Ninja Punk Girls for 10%, and we're going through the training program at the moment, 12 weeks. We're supported by 3 of the biggest, most important names in this particular space. Tal, big miner, publicly traded miner. Vinex are helping us with our technology stack. I'm Richard Boase, I am the founder. Alex Bredman is my CTO. Alex is a Golang cloud architect in the middle of the crowd there. He and I have been in Bitcoin for 9 years. In fact, I met Alex almost at the same time that I met Ava. He's very experienced in Golang, so he's super technical CTO. And his developer, Javier, is a games developer. So we're a good team. Next slide, please. Ava has agreed very kindly to be one of our mentors. We're also supported by Lviv Centre, who's a Techstars mentor. Mel Cypriakis, if I can get her name right, is CCO of Bitstamp. Very, very well respected technology exchange, Bitcoin exchange in the space. And David Guppy, who actually was the CEO of the Beano till last week, but is now leaving. But he's great. We really like him. And we're really grateful to have such good mentors on board. Next slide, please. Here's a bit of our traction. We've got 1,500 Twitter followers. We have got a Discord, which we're inviting people into. We've picked up some lovely brand ambassadors. Some of them are very good friends of mine. They're all my friends, to be fair. Key influencers. We've reached out, done lots and lots of, I've done lots and lots of podcasts. Part of my job is a Bitcoin educator, so I go very much into detail about how Bitcoin actually works, why it scales, the economics, the politics, the philosophy of it, the legality of it, and the technicalities. But I'm also pitching ninja pump girls at these places too, so I'm picking up more and more attention for my project. Next slide, please. So if you want to contact any of us, I'm the best person to speak to. You can get in touch directly with me by dropping a line to richard@fundrise.com, or you can give me a call. And we're looking for £140,000. Why? Because we want to build exchange technology, integrated wallet, gaming platforms, game studio, the works. Thank you.
I thought you were looking for 140 million, so that is in lot 4 here. Okay, great. And there is one more group that have to swam here pretty much across the Pacific. So if I can have the last startup, all the way from quite far away.
That's right. Hello everyone, my name is Baltazar. I come from South America, and I swam all the way from South America to London to found an art gallery that brings both my passions together. My first passion is fine arts, things that are done with devotion, and my second passion, that is Bitcoin. So we have this art gallery that we're building called GNP. The name comes from a Greek myth called Galatea and Pygmalion. Maybe you've heard about it. I'll quickly tell you this Greek myth. It's a myth about a Greek sculptor called Pygmalion. And he was known as the best sculptor of ancient Greece. All his works had a lifelike appearance. And one fine day, Pygmalion comes and carves a statue of the most beautiful woman. And he spends countless hours staring at this statue in the night and falls in love with the statue. So now he's miserable because he knows the statue is just an object. And so poor Pygmalion prays to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, to help him out with this huge problem that he has. And Aphrodite kind of knows Pygmalion because she gave him the talent to make beautiful things. So she comes down from Olympus, goes into Pygmalion's shop, sees the statue, and she's flattered because the statue looks like her. So she decides to turn the statue into a real human. And this is one of those weird Greek myths that have a happy ending. And Pygmalion comes back to the shop, finds Galatea, the statue, and they fall in love. They have a kid called Paphos, and Paphos founds a city in Cyprus that becomes a great marketplace for artwork. So we chose this myth because it has to do with beauty, reality, and authenticity. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, authenticity, because falsifications and counterfeits in art have been happening for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. Humans learn by imitating other humans. That's natural in us. So naturally, we make counterfeits. We copy what others do. So counterfeits have always happened in history, and authenticity is well understood in fine arts. there are three aspects of authenticity. One is provenance that we've been hearing about, and this is a huge one. A synonym for authenticity is something genuine. Genuine, the word, is a synonym for authenticity. And it comes from Latin, from the Latin word genu, for knee. And this is an ancient Roman tradition when a father would sit his son on his knee, recognizing him as his son. So he recognizes the provenance of his son. That's something genuine. That's what we mean when we say something is genuine. So yes, provenance, where did the item come from, who sold it, who owns it, the life story of an item. The second aspect is scientific proof. Any X-rays of the painting that we can do, DNA analysis of the biological components of a painting, that constitutes authenticity as well. And the third important aspect is expert certification. Data is just data. You need a human to interpret that data. We care when someone puts their name on the line, when someone puts their reputation on the line and certifies something. That is important to humans. And how is this authenticity currently certified in the art world? For some of you, if you have a painting at your home, how is it certified? Usually they just give you a fancy piece of paper that has some cool symbols and a signature there that says that your piece of art is authentic. But that fancy piece of paper is easily lost, counterfeit, or stolen. So that's where blockchain comes in. That's what we want to use blockchain for. Here in my pocket, I have an NFC chip, and we've embedded a token, a STAS token, in this NFC chip. I want to show you how it looks like. I just put it on my phone, and I get access to a painting. Right now, it's just a painting. I need to add all the provenance information, but you can imagine it's there. And this is the way we are authenticating art. We are giving artists and art dealers a provenance tag that they can put on their painting with a key to a token, a certification that's linked to a token. So I control the keys to that certification, and in order to sell this, I need to give you the ownership. I need to send you the token certificate to your wallet. We also are selling art at our gallery and earning a portion of the profits. That's one way we're making money as well. And we want to help art brokers, art dealers, and artists understand how the blockchain works. Because there's a huge need for them to learn about what blockchain is and where the benefits are. There's this fallacy out there that something is authentic because it's on the blockchain, and that's not true. Something is not authentic because it's on the blockchain. You can upload bullshit to the blockchain. What makes something authentic is that it fulfills the three aspects of authenticity: provenance, scientific data, and expert certification. So those are the solutions that we're giving artists and art dealers. And if you're interested in my startup, come talk to me. I would love to tell you more about it and the products that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. I think the pizzas have arrived, but we have a very quick panel just to let you interrogate the guys for today. So if I can get, sorry? The video, okay. So, yeah, maybe now.
Okay.
Yeah, we just showed you a little video before of Andrei from Lviv, who has sent us a piece for today, and then we're going to put it up.
So just to say, This project that we are currently supporting is, from my side, also inspired by the fact that I've been working in Ukraine for many years, and one of my very good friends is Andrei Linik, who is a curator in media based in Lviv at the Center of Urban History, where he created Lviv Interactive, so an interactive catalog of the city, which is probably a good idea because it's currently under siege and might be destroyed. So because we wanted Andrei to join us tonight, but the situation is volatile, as you can imagine. So we have had to ask him to record a short video in which Andrei very briefly introduces the work that he and Janina Rudenko have done with the Open Archive of Ukrainian Media Art, of which you can see a small snippet on this table in our foyer that our students have created. So there are 7 selected pieces of Ukrainian media art that you can familiarize yourself with, and if you want to know more, then you're of course invited to visit their website. And I think on this note, we should just let Andrei from Lviv introduce.
I'm an artist and curator. I do work with an experiment on the edge of art and science and philosophy and technology. So in the last 3 weeks, when the war started, came here from Russia, for sure. I do volunteer, for sure. I do not do any artworks, any curating, almost anything, for exception of supporting transfer refugees to the EU border. I do unload, pack and pack trucks with the humanitarian aid, with button-proof vests, with some tactical gears, with medicines and so on. I do DDoS attacks for sure, which is good things to do. I've also been working with preparing the shelters for refugees and for many people who have to flee from these hotspots in the eastern, northern, southern Ukraine, which is horrible. So many people are coming here because they do think that it's much more safer, and it is indeed much more safer than there. So they also do a lot of communication with friends of mine who are showing so many care and kindness and love and support from everywhere, all the world, and we have a very nice, very nice communication, which is has an awful background for sure. So we do raise money, we do find different opportunities to support people who had to flee from their homes, and to support our army, which is also one of the most important things we have to do here. So what I also do, I also teach at the Ukrainian Catholic University. I teach a course which names curating practices, and today I had a lecture. Yes, it's a big, we have. We just yesterday came back to lecturing. So you can imagine the general background, emotional background we may have. So it is for sure very difficult to focus, to think. It is also difficult even to share, to talk on anything except the war, and to talk about. We do talk a lot actually about the changes that the war brings to us. And it is not for sure easy. There's a lot of pain, hatred, fear, hope, belief in too many things. And we do see how the breaks between many things which were in the past are actually breaking and disappearing. They are never happen again. Never in decades. Maybe not happen again. Since 2021, so last year, probably half a year ago, I actually started the space, interdisciplinary art space, which calls Radio Garage, which is a municipal place. And you do things and events and experiment and just making, experimenting, performing with sound technology in the field of contemporary art, with sound art there, generative art, interactive things. We do quite a lot of experiments with radio waves, which is also useful now, especially. But also with some digital privacy concepts and things connected to the media. So quite a lot with the lecturing, discussions and so on. And now the place is actually a shelter. So we have to reconfigure it and to prepare for the people who can stay in there. And it's also not easy when you're building something for a year and you have half a year when it's actually running. And then you have to take everything from there and that's it. Now it's a shelter, which is also good. So Lviv for sure is one of the safest places, cities in Ukraine now. We have more than 250,000 people who are actually still here. More than 1 million passed through the city to the west, and they became a part of almost 3 million refugees, which had to leave Ukraine. And mainly those people are women and elderly and kids. Our routine actually starts and ends here with the sirens. And we have also these telegram notifications, which are sounds like the messages, the warning, alarm, oh, please go to the shelters. Which is not easy when you have a kid, so you have to somehow to explain what is happening. So experiencing this Russism, which is this only thing that we can name it, Russism. It's not only about Putin, it's not about Russia. So this Russism is humanized. So many friends of mine, my relatives, actually are all at the front line. Going there, some leading, some actually left, and some are in Slovakia. But some of my relatives and close friends are at army, for example, in Kharkiv, in Mykolaiv, or in Kiev, and they are witnessing the shelling, which is awful. 2 days ago, I met a couple from Kharkiv. They are also teachers, one of the universities there. They spent those weeks in the shelter, and so they can actually behave normally here because of the silence. They are so much used to the shelling, so they actually cannot. They do afraid silence and quite afraid to go on. So, and also at the same time, in this horrible situation, in this very desperate situation, so we also do witness and experience so many acts of kindness, care, compassion, and to be honest, I never think that I can ever experience something like this. So we witness the enemies, we witness those who want to destroy us. At the same time, we also witness the opposite side of humankind, what is to be human. Just love and compassion is to share some specific, let's say, values about the equal rights. Also, So, thank you for everything. Thank you for your help and care. And I would like to finish it with one of the biggest mottos we have here. One for sure you might heard before, which is it's about the Russian ship and where I should go. But another thing which is more popular and more kind, it's about, we call it everything will be Ukraine, which means in Ukrainian, все буде Ukraine. So thank you so much again. Take care.
Thank you, Stefan, for organizing it. So what's left for us is really to think how each of us can help. This is going to be an enormous effort to house 1.5 million people, maybe more. So the government has just announced Ukrainian resettlement into UK. It's very difficult because the space in London is tight, we know that. But if you know anybody with space, let us know. And that scheme is starting from next week. And we're working with TechFugees to match them to tech jobs in our area and in any agencies that we can support. So coming back to our topic for today, if I can just get one of every startup and Stefan and Caron, we have a quick catch up and give you an opportunity to ask questions and interrogate them about their work. One more chair. Richard, are you still there? Right, so you've seen quite a wide array of interests from theatre, art, games, music, and many things in between. So I just had to kick off a couple of questions. So how did you get into that space? If each of the startups can do something. How did it all start? Because you ended up obviously with a product and thinking, but what prompted you to explore that?
Well, I think I tried to give a good overview. I mean, your Cybersalon was one of my first introductions to this culture, so that's where I kind of began with Bitcoin. With this specific project, it started for me in Tokyo when I was creating the error bots, when I was doing visuals for clubs. And I actually moved into a studio in Brick Lane about 9 years ago and started work and carried on my work with error bots. I'd never taken it into a digital format, and the incubator, the Satoshi Block Dojo, gave me a chance to kind of go for it and just.
So this is something you've been incubating for a long time, but you found the technology to run it with. Okay, what about you guys?
So me and my colleagues, which two of them are here with me, my CEO and my COO, we are in this space for 1 year already. We started in Poland. We started with some other solutions in the blockchain sphere. We tried payment system and so on, but we have some problems with that. It's about law, how it's structured in Poland. So then we moved on the music, and we created 2,000 NFTs for this musician in Poland called Boase. And then we met Satoshi Block Dojo, which they were really interested into us and our solution. And yeah, for 6 months we are now creating Soundoshi, which it didn't start with that name, but I will not tell you the others. Are too embarrassing. So, yeah, but yeah, right now we are almost ready. We are almost created our MVP, and I think we will be launching this year.
I've been in art since after high school, and have always been in love with beautiful things and creations done with devotion. And my other love is Bitcoin. I got really interested in who the creator of Bitcoin was, and that plunged me into a rabbit hole that just kept going and going. And last year I saw the Block Dojo, and this was the perfect opportunity to bring my two passions together. and I pitched the idea of a gallery to the dojo, and they really liked it, and that's how it came to be. And like these guys, we will have our MVP ready in a few months and start testing it.
Great. So these guys are from the same accelerator. It's opening the next round in a few weeks, so this is going to be a long-term project if you want to pursue it. So have you got any questions? What would you like to find out about the startups or Stefan or Caron's work? Vessel, you look like you've got a question there.
Oh, I don't know where to start, but there are many questions. I mean, we've covered such a wide area from that I don't really know if I can ask a sensible question. I would like to maybe ask all the startup people, what makes the blockchain so crucial to your projects? Because it sounds to me like most of your projects are actually more, the crucial elements more social than technological.
Can I start?
Yeah.
So, blockchain is a ledger. We see blockchain as the plumbing, as the enabler. It lets us create a timestamp of a record. So it's immutable, it cannot be tampered with. And that lets us create a provenance trail of an artwork. So it's fundamental for us to have that information set in stone, and blockchain enables that.
Yeah, and for us, we found the problem with the subscription model that is existing today. And through blockchain, we are able to create long-lasting NFTs that really have use, and they are not just JPEGs. Who looks pretty. I'm sorry. Yeah, and the blockchain allows us that to create this direct connection from artists to their fans, and this has never been before. It was lost with streaming, and we want to rekindle this connection.
Hiya. It's property rights, really, that's the thing. It's new models. It's a chance to experiment with the technology, to build out the technology at a very low level, which is really exciting, and to get ideas funded. Really, that's the crucial thing.
Can I just follow up on it? So in your case, it sounds to me like the expertise that you offer is one of the main things that would separate. If we're talking about, if there's a dispute, let's say somebody just came and said, this is my image, and you guys, you certified them, that doesn't make it their image necessarily, right?
That's right.
So and the same thing in your case, I would say, I can't see, I mean, we had Napster. You can do this with old school technology, right?
Yeah, Napster was illegal, yes. So it was not really possible.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how it works out with this technology. And in your case, I also can't see why we can't do that with Web 2.0 technology. What you do.
I think the key here is we see, me particularly, or these guys as well, all of us kind of come from this from the same point of view, which is actually this particular blockchain scales globally, and it does it for very low transaction fees, and that means it can support everything. It can be a global economic platform for everybody. And so the opportunity there is to go back to the original formulation of Bitcoin when it was released and say, like, well, actually all of these really cool features that were turned off could do all of this really interesting stuff. We've got an opportunity to build it out now. We've got an opportunity to get funded. We've got an opportunity to make toys and games and music platforms and provenance trackers and all sorts of things. So it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer from my perspective. I'm like, oh, well, this actually works. Let's do it then. You know, and so I think you have to think of the future as being a very, very integrated place. When I talk about Web3, and I don't often, I think about it being a commercially connected internet environment. And that means that, you know, websites will pay a teeny tiny, you know, millionth of a penny maybe to connect to each other and stuff like that. If we're all operating in that environment because it's super economic and super efficient, the whole world gets loads more value back as a consequence. So it's not that we're choosing to build things on the blockchain arbitrarily. What we're saying is, actually, this is what the future is going to be built on. You might as well start building it now. Right? It's a great
one of the
opportunity.
reasons why I see lots of my technology friends are getting into it is looking for model which doesn't have to be based on advertising, because we spent 20 years fighting against advertising and we're just losing every day. So more data is scraped, more data is stolen. Like, it can't sneeze without your data being captured. This model has got a little bit better reward structure. So if you are contributing, if you're the verifier, if you do your bit, something comes back. So maybe there is a way of avoiding getting this slip into the advertising model, which, yeah, it's there, but we know it's so dangerous and it's so negative. And it hasn't really constructed anything interesting. The best thing on the internet is Wikipedia, and they managed to fob off advertising so far. So the Web3 has got some aspects of a reward structure which is more, well, which is kind of like a co-op or a B Corp, that if you contribute, you will be part of it. We lost that in Web 2. I was doing Web 1, and we didn't even think that advertising will be what will kill it, but that's what happened. So we kind of, at the mercy of Facebook and Google and Amazon, and nobody can do anything. It's very, very depressing. In my day job, I'm a CTO, and I'm just hostage to 3 companies every day, and it's so boring. It's just boring. And I know all my friends are bored as well. We want to find out alternative and want to find out something else. And unfortunately, the governments quite like having to deal with only Facebook, only Google, only Amazon, because A, they get all the money, and 2, is one call. You just call Nick Clegg, and he will make Facebook show the messages you want to show. Easy. So they have absolutely zero incentive to regulate it. They have zero incentive to monopolize it. Nothing's going to happen. We're going to live in it forever until we actually, pull our sleeves out and do something.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about, maybe a question for myself? So, because exactly. So I was wondering, why no one has ever conceived of using the blockchain and distributed ledger technology for union business. Yeah, you could store and mint every single complaint. Yeah, and it could never be deleted, and every employee, even if he would leave and move on, could still see all the machinations of the managers and what we call class struggle.
I knew we would get to class struggle at some point.
This was already.
Simon.
A question to maybe the sort of the more kind of artistic and the academic part of the room. So this blockchain technology has been presented here as like a great democratizer and as a bottom-up thing, but there are very large amounts of money and power in this scene as well, and also really large and complicated technical problems that get exploited by people who want Axie Infinity, which was mentioned, now has suffered about hyperinflation, which is a very interesting, a super complicated economic problem that I'm sure that people who play games don't really want to deal with at all. The same is true for smart contracts. The amount of ghost stories that come in with those kind of structures about trying to defeat them and trying to subvert them or trying to find loopholes in them is tremendously scarce, right? So looking at these challenges from the cultural sector, looking at how you provide value for people at university or maybe actors, people who are not maybe super interested in the economics of tokens and the onslaught that brings, or the technical difficulties of managing those. How do you propose on offsetting those? How do you want us to make a safe space that's sort of culturally vibrant and interesting against those complications?
I'm invested in Ada Cardano because it's the first peer-reviewed and Swiss-based blockchain. So I think that peer review has a really significant role in the development of blockchain technology that's being used for content authentication. Yeah, and I think this is where I see a very interesting future emerging. But we'll need to wait a little because at the moment, tech market has severely suffered. The crypto market, not that much.
I think it's important to just be part of the conversation, especially as a creative. There's a lot of technology that's exploding. We've heard, Cardano, there's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, there's layers within Bitcoin and layers within layers of different things. And although as a user of the technology, this space right now is certainly not where I need to be operating in, and it would be foolish of me to, because I just don't really understand it. But I think just like Web 2 had this similar bemusement to it, it will start to make sense, and people who realise there's something there, it will gradually make sense. And the point is, especially, so whether it's for trade unions or whether it's for music authentication, there'll come a point where the people who do want to make things will be able to connect the dots, and you've got to listen out and look where the dots are for you ever to be able to connect them. And that's kind of where we are in this space right now. And there's something that the pay it back mechanism, it seems that there might be a pay it back mechanism in there somewhere, and that interests me.
And the most important is the open source. There is very little open source going outside of the space. So the fact there's so much innovation so fast, it's just we back. Remember when people in 90s everybody had to work for Microsoft, and it was so boring. And the moment people spotted open source, yes, we go, great. And okay, the first 5 years was random and cybersecurity issues and everything, but then we built stuff. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of that. This is open enough for everybody to have a play. Sorry, Ben, yeah.
I'm curious, I've got a question here for the panel, really. And it is that sort of Web 1 to Web 2, Web 3, sort of, where are we in the timeline story? I can remember back to pre-99, so pre the Web 1 crash, right? The investing crash to Web 1, the dot-com bubble crash. And around that time, if you could string enough buzz terms together around a business idea that used the word .com, you get a lot of money for it. And Q3.com is probably the perfect example of that. If you ever, their buildings were incredible. I'm wondering, where you think we are in the Web 3.0. Have we burst our bubble, and are we now at the point where actually you don't get a business just for inventing a coin that does coin stuff, and we're in the place where there's functionality that made the compression or the website or the engine. We're over that bubble. We're into the really good bit. We're actually starting to build stuff. Are we pre-bubble or post-bubble?
We are pre-bubble.
This is a bubble that'll burst, right? This is the point where everybody believes the wrong thing up until the bubble bursting, and then past that, in the ruins, we start to actually make some use. Because I don't think some of you are post-bubble. I see post-bubble projects already, where what matters isn't the tech; it's what the tech's doing. So the credentialing in the game thing, the history of that. You're not buying the coin. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I've had this conversation, all we would have talked about was another coin. That's it. There would have been no product, there would have been no service layer, there would have been no utility. It would just been, my coin enables you to do stuff once you work out what the heck it is you want to do. But buy my coin now, because I need $4 trillion to buy an island in the middle of Europe, or whatever it is. Pre-bubble or post-bubble?
Creative distraction.
Pre-bubble.
I think pre-bubble. And I also think the saddest part of it is that because this time artists have been really at the forefront with NFTs, and everybody wants to, it's a thing that you can see, you can stick a JPEG on a blockchain, there's so many different ones, iterative ones, people selling them for lots of money, people selling them and making a big publicity stunt out of it, but then when you look at the underlying of it, those people will have invested in those art, whether it's on a blockchain or not. And I think there will be a bubble burst, and I think a lot of artists will suffer in this case. But the technology that will come together and that will serve the different platforms when all of that bubble bursts to see what remains will be this landscape of, Bebo and MySpace disappeared without a trace. There will be a lot of big names that we know right now or in the next 18 months that will disappear.
I think.
Last question, sorry.
Sorry, got lots of questions in my head, very curious about lots of things.
traditionally when a business launches, it would identify territories and markets. Just curious to know, do you think that this is transcending, Web 3.0 transcends geographical boundaries, or looking at arts, looking at music, looking at gaming, are you identifying certain territories where there's a stronger growth or appetite for Web 3.0 and blockchain?
I'd like to speak to that one. The Dojo is incorporating companies in the UK. So we're not kind of taking any token funding route in terms of creating decentralized organizations or anything like that. But we're making UK companies that sell products for a return. I don't know too much about Lukas's model in terms of, excuse me, drawn a blank.
It's time.
Sorry, Baltazar's model. But I know that my customers are going to be global.
Right.
That there's a huge market in Asia Pacific for blockchain and games crossed over, particularly Asia Pacific. They have about 40% of the global market. I think that the reality here is that commerce is global, that you don't need to keep too strong a trap on where the money is coming from in the crypto world. You do still need to do your KYC and all of those additional checks in order to make sure that the business that you're doing is legal and money laundering and stuff like that. So I don't know if that answers your question precisely.
Well, we did look at some numbers. So in UK, there's about 2.5% of population that owns NFTs. In US, it's a little bit higher. Oddly enough, in Germany, it's about 4%. But in Indonesia, Nigeria, Philippines, is in 35%. So it's just gone crazy there for reasons which I'm not entirely sure about. So there is a certain imbalance towards Asia. But I think at the end of the day, core e-commerce, non-blockchain e-commerce, is in the West and in US, because the legal framework is there to protect the structure. The regulations around blockchain are emerging. I think Biden said last week that they're going to regulate something, at least in US. So I think generally people follow structured environments. Whether it's crypto or not, will probably end up in places which has got the strongest law around it. So it's not total Wild West. That would be my guess.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, sure.
I think in your question, what I understood was why would they choose those three sectors? Well, yeah, trying to understand is that,
for me, I
will
see
see
the reason they chose those sectors because artwork, music, and gaming is understandable for the general public straight away. So if you want to step into something that people know, you start with something they know rather than going into things that are too complicated. That then breaks them into the mold of understanding the concept to then be able to move it over to the next one. In the same way that we had Oyster cards came out years and years ago, before touch payments came out. They parked it on one side until people started to use their credit cards to touch, and they understood that they could pay and do it in that basis. Then the Oyster card came back, and then people did it. So the banking, in the same way the banking helped us to understand to pay just by touching, and now we just use our phones now. The same way that these chosen three projects which are understandable for the general public to then step into. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mandy. But also there is kind of counterpoint that, when people invented film, they spent the first 10 years filming theater because they couldn't think about anything else. And it wasn't until about 10 years later, actually, when you cut the tape, you can do different things. And then we got into movies. So I sort of have to a point, as much as I love the projects and I'm supporting them wholeheartedly, you're right that we are latching on behaviors that's already here. But the products in this space might be completely different products in 5 years' time, because we are filming theater still. So let's see what happens.
Just the fact that we can now store the edit history of a Photoshop file on the blockchain is for everyone who uses Photoshop a giant leap. Yeah.
You can see the Stefan.
And not just a small step. Yeah, as it sounds when you read the ad. So I think I'm super passionate about it. We're getting some.
Okay,
Pizza.
thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Good luck with your activation. Wine and tea.